Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Robertson, founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. I'm here to share the speaker portion of our Connections Over Coffee gathering of the On Purpose Woman Global Community. Carol Burbank is speaking on how to build your professional and personal impact by publishing articles. Carol is a published writer, writing coach, teacher, and organizational consultant. She is the founder of Story Weaving Coaching and Consulting and a host for the On Purpose Woman Global Community in Fort Washington, Maryland. Her most recent project is supporting and publishing memoirs for people who have an urgent and passionate story they want to tell the world. If you are interested in joining her free bi-monthly creativity gathering, email her at cburbank@storyweaving.com, and that information is also in the text. So Carol, welcome. And you're on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yay. I'm so excited to be here to share some insights and processes that you can use to get articles out in the world that will increase your visibility and power and impact, whatever your purpose is, whether you have a business or whether you simply want to share your thoughts and ideas. I'm a writer. I've been a writer my whole life, and I write many different things, but I professionally, for 20 years off and on of the first 20 years of my career, I was a journalist, and I specialized in features, articles, and criticism, professional criticism. And I did what all journalists do. I wrote to a deadline. I wrote for I was a freelancer, so I wrote for multiple articles. And I got in the habit of expecting to publish and to share my ideas. And I think every single person hearing this should be getting in that habit yourselves, because it's a game changer. And I'll talk to you about why. Mainly, if you write articles and share them in multiple venues, then what's going to happen is that you're going to be making connections, bringing in clients, and making really good contacts in the world. It's not just advertisement. And I believe we should, if we're entrepreneurs, be doing both advertisement and writing articles. But remember, writing an article is not advertising, because if I read an article that's obvious, buy my product, buy my product, buy my product, buy my product, it doesn't matter how beautifully it's written. I say, oh, that's an ad. But if I read an article that actually shares an idea or serves me in some way or interests me or engages me, then I make a connection to you. Buy advertisements, write articles. That's the big overarching umbrella. But we're going to do who, what, where, when, why, the classic journalism questions in reverse order, because in living on purpose, we always start with the why. So I want to go backwards through who, what, where, when, why. And let's start with why. I'm going to run through these, and then I want to open it up for conversation about where you might want to do articles and how you might be able to apply this to your work and your goals. Okay, why? Although articles are not advertisement, what they basically do is they establish you as the expert. They help you share your expertise, and they help you connect with a larger community of professionals and like-minded people if you're not trying to share your professional services, so that basically you're not just sitting in your house thinking, oh, I have all these great ideas, but you're actually sharing these ideas and you're becoming part of a larger conversation with all sorts of people, editors, clients, collaborators, colleagues, and curious people. So you become the expert, and that's super important. That's the why. It's also very satisfying, but that's not the only reason to do it, unless that's the only reason you want to do it. Okay, so when you think about an article, think about a specific purpose for the article, not your global purpose, like we often talk about in On Purpose Woman, but your specific purpose. I want to share this technique. I want to share this idea. I think that getting this into the community will make a difference to people. I think this will help me meet the people that I want to meet and be in a conversation that I think is important right now. That's the why we publish an article. When do we publish articles? Whenever possible. I cannot underline that often enough. Find places to publish articles whenever you can. And that means when your energy allows, when you can write them, and when you find an opportunity, say yes. It should be a regular strategy in your business, especially if you have a business. It is for me. I publish I probably publish about 20 articles a year. And I really try and make whatever I have to say something I want to share with the world, something I want to say. And it is part of a strategy. So just like blogging or any other strategy, what you need to think is, how can I healthfully build this into my routine? That's not something we're going to talk about today, but I want to emphasize that because not everybody loves to sit down and write. Some people are doing a lot of other things, but whenever you can, do it. It's much more impactful than a blog. It's almost as impactful as a workshop. And in fact, it's impactful in different ways. So where? This is an interesting question and one that's very practical. You need to find publications that reach the potential clientele or colleagues or like-minded people that you want to connect with. So I'm going to use me as an example because we'll talk about this more later. So I have 3 key places where I publish articles currently. The first is the Science of Mind magazine. I publish a monthly leadership and spirituality article there. And I do it because I love to share these ideas. That was part of my deepest research 10 years ago. And then I was pulled into Science of Mind. And it also has become a way for me to think about, how might I publish a book with all of these? I mean, you have what? That's 30, in 3 years, that's 36 essays. So now I'm beginning to get enough that I could actually think about publishing a book. I don't have to start with the book idea. That's a great reason to publish articles too. They give you a traction for your book, and for, if you're not going to publish a book, just traction. So the good thing about Science of Mind is it's a paid venue. It doesn't pay an awful lot, but I get paid for it, which is nothing to sneeze at. So I also publish in places where I don't get paid for articles. The second place I publish is Pathways. This was a real breakthrough for me this year. I publish articles in Pathways magazine now because I guess I've been around long enough and advertising in Pathways long enough that they just kind of included me on an invitation. And boy, has publishing in Pathways given me an extra boost for my advertisements there. Pathways doesn't pay me money, but it pays me with an extra ad. So now I put in 2 ads for 2 services. I pay for the one, which is separate. And they don't always publish my articles, but when they do, I feel really good because I read Pathways. And Pathways is a place where many of the holistic and creative people might find me. And also it's a community that I'm part of. So it's a natural place for me to publish articles. And finally, I publish in our very own OPW magazine. And I love publishing in that because it connects me with our network. Now, I don't get paid for that. And when I advertise, that's a separate cost. But what I get back from that is a sense of community and a sense of contributing to a community, as well as participating in a network and a community that has given me lots of people that I use business-wise, and also a lot of connections that have helped me expand my business in lots of unexpected ways. So those are my 3 main places. And I publish different kinds of things in different places because whenever you publish, you look at the site and you say, what kinds of things do they like to publish? And then you write for their niche. So here's a good example with one of our own OPW members, Jean Wright. Early in our work together on her book on being a good salesperson, she and I dug up this really cool column in Entrepreneur Magazine where they wanted to find out tips from entrepreneurs. And she had written a chapter and she sent it along. And the editor loved it, edited the heck out of it, totally transformed it, and published it. So before she even finished her book, she had an article in Entrepreneur Magazine, one of the highest levels of magazines. So she has more traction for her book than she ever could have expected because she had the guts to send something. And I just want to say, sometimes it just takes the courage to say, hey, let's go for it. And that's really, really important. So where is kind of a moving target. Okay, I want to do a sidebar here about pay, non-pay, pay for. This is an important thing that is up to each individual to choose. Ideally, we should either get paid for our writing or get something in return for it, like the advertisement I get in Pathways is a lovely bonus. Sometimes we don't get anything but a connection, but we don't have to pay for that. Like I don't have to pay to be an OPW. And these are the three ideal places because I have an advertising budget. I pay a lot for advertising in other venues. And so for me, expanding my advertising budget to paying to be included in something isn't always a good option. Now, there are services where you could pay to be included in a magazine. So a good example is Your Health magazine, which is commonly put in doctors' offices all over in every state. I used to publish in them. I used to write articles for them when I put an advertisement in them when I was doing body work. And it was a good opportunity because I paid for the advertisement and then I got the bonus of writing the article. And I stopped doing it when I realized that it wasn't really sending clients my way because you have to monitor the results if you're going to do pay to play. Another space for pay to play is a new service that actually can be very useful for us, where people say, pay this amount of money, and we'll help you develop an article and we'll publish it in a book, which we put out. And actually, Heal My Voice was a great example of that because the services Andrea offered were so deep and so supportive. So by the time the Heal My Voice book came out, her participants had not only developed a good article, but had also really developed their voice. So it was a really good service. And some of them are just an opportunity to publish. So I want to give you very quickly the yeses and nos of that. So the first yes is the service that they're offering me worth the money that they're asking? Like Heal My Voice is, as a way of building confidence and doing what we need and actually finding our voice. If that's something I wanted to do around an article I didn't know how to write, that would be exactly what I would want to pay to play. And then the publication would give me traction, right? There are also publications where they offer traction and you pay, but they don't, and they might offer some coaching and editing, and that's lovely, but they don't offer a deeper service. For those publications, these are the yeses. Say yes if it's in your budget and it's easy for you to spend that money. Say yes if you get support and services and you know that it's going to be a high quality publication. So look at the publications that have been done by that company and see if you would be proud to be participant in that, right? You should do this with anything, the magazine, the press, the whatever that you want to publish in. And yes, if the distribution will really give you traction. And yes, if you don't have to put a lot of extra money in hidden costs, like for example, if you don't have to buy a lot of books, if you don't have to pay for advertising, if you don't have to do a lot of legwork in advertising that you're not quite willing to do, then yes, 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 yes. No, if you lose your rights to the content. No, if there's hidden costs, so ask. And no, if you're responsible for doing all the marketing. One of the great things about publishing in a magazine is that the magazine wants people to read it. So that you write on their coattails. It's distributed. You don't have to distribute it, although you will distribute if you publish. So say, hey, read my article in OPW. It's really cool. You'll like it. I had fun writing it, whatever you want to say. Or this will share a really important technique with you, however you want to do the message, you'll do that. But if you have to do a lot of advertising and a lot of legwork to get something out in a service, then you need to think, can I do that? And am I willing? Is it worth it? Especially if you're paying to play. So that's my little sidebar on pay to play. And it's important for you to decide, because you've got to be the discerning consumer in those cases. Okay. So we've done why, when, and where. I want to talk about what. What should you publish? Okay. The what is going to be fairly easy if you just sit down and think about it. But I'm going to give you some tips. One, you can translate your blogs by rewriting them into articles because you've already written them. So if you cared to write a blog, or if you cared to do a podcast, then you can translate that into an article fairly easily. That's really easy. But you do have to revise it for publication because the magazine wants something new, right? And when I say that, revise it for publication means it can't be identical. You can't just cut and paste unless you have permission. But the good rule is tweak it to fit the publication, and the publication will be happy. 2, think, what questions do your clients ask all the time that you think you could write an article about? This is a treasure trove. Take them one at a time and then publish a short article about each question. This is a treasure trove. 3, what questions do you wish your clients would ask so that they knew something that could help them? That is another treasure trove. I mean, how many times do we as coaches or whatever we do get off the phone and go, I wish Carol was ready to ask that question. What would help other people be ready to ask that question? Because if I'm not ready to ask a question, I'm not going to ask it. It's part of the relationship of a coach client to move to that question, right? As Ginny said earlier, we need to move intuitively towards transformation in a way that is healthy for our clients. But that question, I wish Carol would ask that question. Maybe I ought to write an article about that question. And then 4, what wisdom or knowledge do people need who might be your client that would help them? What wisdom or knowledge do you have? Now, this one just kind of sounds abstract, but when I think about my positive experience with a money coach, I think one of the things that she's gradually imparted to me is that I don't have to do endless amounts of research in order to make a decision. I need to do some research, but then I need to decide. That's a piece of wisdom or knowledge that I kind of wish she had written an article about so that I could read it and go, oh, now I get to work on that, right? So the wisdom or knowledge that you have that you might not impart directly to your clients because you're working with their processes is something that you can actually bring in. And finally, and this is another abstract one, but what are you passionate about today? So when you sit down at your desk, you're passionate about saying something. And for those of you listening who aren't entrepreneurs or who might want to make a comment. So let's say something is happening in the world and there's so much happening in the world that you want to comment on. What are you passionate about today? Write an article about that and then find a place to put it. So there's two ways you can go about it, right? You can find the where first and then write the article, or you can find the what you want to write first and then find a place to put it. But either way, get it out there. Okay, this is the last one, and it's who. Now, as entrepreneurs and as people who are passionate about getting our ideas out in the world, we have to say, who do we want to attract, right? That's something we think about all the time. This is not the question that I think you should answer with your article. The question Although if you haven't done that work, I recommend you sit down and do that work right away, because that's implicit in any advertising or any choices you make for your business. But that's not what this is about. The who question is, who am I? And what is it that I want to share with the world? Because writing an article is time, is energy, is thought, is care, is learning to bridge and connect with an audience. So who am I? What is my expertise? How do I want to share it? Where do I need to hold back for my paying clients? For you entrepreneurs, you know what this is. Like, if I give my deepest, darkest secret, or brightest secret, sorry, my deepest, brightest secret out in an article, then it's out there. But I might just want to share that with the people who really are committed to coming to me as clients. I'm not saying I'm hiding anything. I'm saying there are some things that don't need to be in an article. That might be more for your book, your deepest, brightest work in a book where there's copy written all over it. And it's, you mark your territory louder with a book. With an article, where am I thinking? Family holdback. What do I want to give only to my clients? But there's a piece of that you want to share anyway. And it's the bridge to that deeper knowledge, because you want to get clients who want that deeper knowledge, don't you? Okay. And the last question, how can I share myself, my expertise in this article efficiently and affordably? And this is the practical question. Who am I? And how can I share that efficiently and affordably? So that's the questions I asked about where. And that little sidebar I talked about. But it's also, I don't have the energy or the time to write a monster article for the Atlantic this month. Or I don't want to write a letter to the Washington Post. I want to write something for OPW, but what is it that I can efficiently and affordably share with that in terms of my time, my energy, my money, and my impact? So the who is really, who am I and what do I have to share right now and how can I do it? Finally, and I'm definitely rolling through this, so I'm hoping that people will have some questions, but I want to share a few resources for you. The first resource is Google. So you type in magazines plus your niche. So Andrea, for you, it would be magazines plus ancestors, magazines plus healing, magazines plus whatever. And you type in as many of these as you can. Be creative. One Google search will not reveal all the magazines, but make sure you put in magazines or journals or whatever. So that newspapers. So be specific about where you're looking to publish. If you're looking to be a guest blogger, look for guest bloggers, health, whatever it is, business. And just keep typing in keywords until you get the one that directs you to the best resources. Then you'll go to those websites for those magazines, blogs, whatever you want to publish in, and you'll look at them and you'll see if it's a fit for you. And then you can take the next step. Okay, the second one second resource I'm going to put in, it's called Duorope.com. Duorope.com is a service that costs, I think, $59 a year, very affordable. And they have a bunch of searches for different niches. So you can find agents there, you can find places to publish poetry, nonfiction, fiction, articles about a lot of things. Then they have a bunch of search protocols. They also have a link to something called submittable.com. Submittable.com is a service where many places that want articles or whatever you're wanting to publish, for those of you who want to publish your creative work, this is a great resource too. But basically, if it says submit through Submittable, you pay Submittable to be a member, and then you send out your article. You send it out as a PDF. And then that goes into a chart. So Submittable keeps track of everything you've submitted for you. And so it does a lot of the legwork for you in terms of counting. So it's well worth it. The other thing is a lot of people are using Submittable now. Not everybody, but submittable.com is something to think about. And the third resource is you. So what I recommend is you buy a little notebook and you stick it in your pocket or your purse or your car or whatever or you have multiple notebooks, however is good for you to work. Small enough that you can jot down ideas in it, kind of like we jot down mileage. And so that means that when you're with a client and the client says something brilliant and you think, oh, I want to write an article about that because this is something we're talking about, you write it down in the notebook. Excuse me. And when you're in the car and you think of an idea, you pull over and you write it down. Or when you read an article in the paper, you pull over, you write it down. And then when it comes to sitting at your desk, you don't have to just rack your brain. You pull out the notebook and go, oh, I like that idea. I like that idea. And you go back to the Washington Post article, or you go back to the OPW article that inspired you, or you go back to the thought that you had whenever you had it, and you say, okay, yeah, I want to write that article now, so that you use yourself as a resource, your own mind, your own spirit, your own purpose as a resource. Really important. And finally, I want to offer me as a resource. Not everybody wants to work with a writing coach, but if you do, I'm offering you a special deal with OPW for a $95 consultation, 1 hour. That's like 50% off of my normal fee. And we will consult about creating an article strategy. I'd be willing to look at an article that you've written. I'd be willing to go through the internet with you, do whatever you need to kind of get your head in a framework of how do you build impact around an article. So email me. I'll put my email in the chat. cburbank@storyweaving.com. Oops. And I put it in wrong. At storyweaving.com. And you can contact me for that consultation if you are interested. So I've just gone through very quickly, and forgive me if it was too fast, the why, when, where, what, who, and the how, the resources that you might need to start getting your work out there. And what I'd like to do now in the time we have left is to open it up to some questions or thoughts that have come up in the group so that we can actually deal with your specific questions and brainstorm or troubleshoot.
Well, first, Carol, I'd like for everybody to unmute yourself so we can applaud for Carol and she can hear it. So,
Thank you.
Great talk. Lots of good stuff there. So, Carol, you can handle it now.
Oh, okay. So, Mary.
Yeah, I have housekeeping questions. How long is an article? How many paragraphs, how many words, and what is expected?
That's an excellent question. The length of the article depends on the publication. So I've published articles in Science of Mind. I'm limited to 350 words, which is very small for big ideas. But there are articles that I've been able to write much longer articles. I'm doing a feature article for Science of Mind, and there is no word limit. So you ask the editor what the word limit is, and you look at the publication and you see where there are short things you might want to contribute to, or whether there are longer things you want to do. So that's the short answer. An article can be huge, but I would recommend you start with shorter pieces that are skimmable and have more impact. And then as you develop a track record with your articles, you can move to the longer articles. I don't think if I didn't write a column, I'd get as much freedom for the feature magazine. Good question. Any other questions or thoughts? Experiences where you've published your articles that had real impact or increased your traction?
Well, Carol, I do want to say that you mentioned all of your columns and how you could see a book coming out of that. I just ordered and we just got Jesse Jennings' book. Don wanted to get that. And Jesse Jennings is a columnist in Science of Mind magazine, and it's like 10 years worth of his best columns, apparently. So, and
Thank
Andrea,
you.
I'm seeing Taboo Topics book or something like that, with you.
Absolutely. And what I want to say, especially here, is I have a lot of people come to me and say, I want to write a book. One client said, I want to write a book about this traumatic experience I had in the military. And so we worked on her goal. And it got to the point where she was like, how do I write a book about this? I said, why do you have to write a book? Write an article. So she wrote an article. It was published in a military journal. And now that traumatic experience, she's counseling other people who've had that experience from an article. And her goal was just to share her experience. She wasn't trying to, create a coaching business, but she ended up doing it. So if you're dreaming of a book, yay. I mean, I really think everybody should do what our dreams say, but it's so much easier to start with an article. Whether you want to write a memoir or you want to share a coaching technique or a core idea like the taboo topics. Emily, have you written articles about about your money coaching work?
I've written for On Purpose Woman magazine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The one question I had is so you did give the tip that you want to retain the permission over your work. If you do publish an article, and then you want to write a book afterwards, can you use that material in the book?
Yes, you can. The trick is that you can't use the exact same wording, or you have to get permission to use the exact same wording. I don't think this is true of OPW, because OPW doesn't keep your copyright, you keep the copyright. But for Science of Mind, it's their copyright. The article is under me, I retain the rights to the material. But in order to publish Science of Mind articles in OPW, I had to get permission. And so I had to add a little squib that said, this was originally published in Science of Mind magazine, and provide a link. So you have to credit where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
Usually magazines will do that.
Okay.
It's not, but if they don't want you to republish it in any way, then you just revise it so that it's the same material, because you always own the material, but you don't use the exact same words.
Okay.
Good question. And in fact, I don't see any reason you shouldn't take your OPW articles, find a publication that might be a really great source, and then reframe them for that publication.
You can do whatever you want with us.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. and reframing doesn't have to be a total revision. It just means that you don't have to take it from a new angle, or because the material is yours. So for Science of Mind, when I've rewritten them for other publications, the information is the same, but sometimes I just get a blessed longer article out of it and I can say more. And that's not the same piece.
And Emily does a wonderful blog that I think I don't know if it's weekly. I just know that when they come in, I read them because they're short and they have great information. So that also, in fact, that's how I get some of my articles. Somebody will send a blog and I'll go, I love this. Can I publish it? And I'll take it as is if they want to give it to me as is, because usually, if it's appropriate for it. It's just mining. So I'm always paying attention to when people write things and they just send them to me, not for me to publish, but just because I'm on their email list.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, this is the power of blogs. I actually had a book deal offer some years ago based on my leadership blog, and I was so excited. Unfortunately, it didn't fall through. It fell through because I couldn't talk them into letting me keep the basic copyright. And for a book, you want to have basic copyright. And if you want to know more about book publishing, you can email me and we can have a talk. But that's why that didn't go through. But I was so happy. But it's because I wrote all these blogs that I got this offer. So yes, keep up with your blogs. And then turn those blogs into articles because you've already written them. And they're beautiful.
So what is okay, so an article is just something, it's like a blog, but it's published somewhere else.
Pretty much. I mean, a blog is an article that you put on your personal website. You're the editor, you're the writer.
Yeah.
In a journal, you have to deal with the standards of the publication. So please expect the editor to write back and say, I wasn't sure what this meant, or we have to shorten it. So you need to cut 100 words or blah, 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 right? When Jean Wright did her publication for Entrepreneur Magazine, she sent them an article. They reframed it. In fact, they significantly rewrote it, but the content was all the same. And she was thrilled with it. She said, oh, I like that. Yay. And then she made one suggestion because they changed a wording, and they took her suggestion and they published the article. So it was a great experience. And I had editors when I was a journalist totally reframe my articles or say, Carol, this one doesn't make sense. Give me a new lead, rewrite it. Give me some examples, because editors will do what editors will do. So you have to have a bit of a thick skin when you're submitting articles, but the payoff is so much worth it. And I always think of editors as support, truthfully, outside support and new colleagues. I see we're kind of at the noon time. Do we have time for one last question, Ginny, or
Sure.
any other questions or thoughts? Is anyone here inspired? Yeah, Andrea.
Yeah, I'll just say I've been thinking a lot about writing more articles, and this was just perfect timing. It's like I don't have a specific question. It's just the content was so powerful today. I took a ton of notes and I'll let it process and all of that. But thank you. I really appreciate your expertise and your generosity in sharing it. So
Thank
yeah.
you so much.
Mhm.
I hope all of you write articles. Sharon, I hope you write articles about your experiences. We need to know it. Mary, I think if you have that gift, you can, that you talked about earlier, you can use that in your writing.
Yeah. I've been inspired. I do a workshop on 10 mistakes startups make, and I can do an article on each one of the mistakes. Question for you. Does it improve your SEO or your reach of your article if you put links in it?
Yes, if it is an online article, yes. You must always put links in your blogs, in your articles, and also links to legitimate sources. This is really important. Don't put links to some random blog that you found that makes kind of sense. Mm-hmm. Find a Washington Post article or New York Times article or an article in Your Health magazine that can be linked to online. Something, and it doesn't have to be like a top article, but it has to be legitimate. And so that when people go to it, they see that you're expert enough that you actually bothered to find good links. Mm. You know, that's really important, but links make a huge difference. If you put links in your blog, they'll know that you did the link, or an article, they'll know that you made the link. They'll link back to you. If you posted, and then if you post the article in your own blog, then you've created a triple link here. Very powerful. Good question.
That's also something to consider, because I remember a number of years ago writing, people had asked me, they'd heard me speak on something, can you write about that? But they wouldn't let, like, you could have a short bio, but no links were allowed. Yep. And I think that's important. You know, do you want to take the time to do that when nobody can find you? Well, your name's there, but they can't find you. They don't know where you are, who you are, anything. So,
well, you make sure that in your bio, it points to your website, or it points.
No, they wouldn't allow that. They wouldn't allow bio links even.
Well, you know what I would do in that case is I would link to the article on my website, and I would post it on my website, and then people who will get that information, it would triangulate.
Okay, good idea.
And that's okay. I don't link to storyweaving.com which is my website, I don't think I linked to that in the Science of Mind. It just says I'm a leadership specialist, blah, blah, blah. And I think there's another bio somewhere, but the fact that I do it is in and of itself powerful. So sometimes links are permitted and sometimes they're not. It depends. I don't think the links are permitted in something like The Atlantic or one of the local, Fairfax News Journal or whatever, if you want to publish it in a local. But you can always create a link on your website, and you put it you can put it in a box on the top. Check out my article in Fairfax News Journal, and people can go click. I always tell my authors, just link and link and link from your side. Whether they link to you is you still get traction. And it's not just linking traction, it's connection, right? Because if I write in Science of Mind, over time, I had a personal connection in a Columbia church, a Science of Mind church. And now I'm teaching workshops on leadership at that church because I had a personal connection there. And and they knew me because of my Science of Mind. So if they hadn't known me, it would have taken them longer to actually connect the dots and hire me. That was a surprise. I didn't do the magazine for that. The benefits will surprise you.
I already knew you and really liked you. And then when I found that you did this column, because I've been reading Science of Mind for 30 years, that I was like, whoa, because I know they don't have slouchy people in that magazine.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And yeah. So that brings me to probably the most important point, which is aim high, get the low hanging fruit, but aim high. So all of us who write for On Purpose Woman, it's not The Atlantic, but you know what? The fact that we've written for On Purpose Women means we can go up the ladder and get to higher and higher publications. And we're also getting credits for our resume. We're getting credits for connections, and we can actually think big. But for example, when I write an essay that I'm really proud of, I don't send it to the lower in the kind of cultural hierarchy places first. I send it to the top ones, and I kind of expect them to say no. I've never been published in The Atlantic, but why not try? Oh, and look at things like Chicken Soup for the Soul. They pay $400 an article. They don't accept a lot of articles, but they accept a bunch, and they'll get your name out there all over the place. They keep the rights to that article forever. They can publish it 4 million times. $400 is a lovely sum of money, but for what they're getting, it's just a small amount. But for us, Chicken Soup for the Soul would be a great way to do it. I could see Emily, you doing it. I could see Sharon, you doing it. They want kind of personal interest stories. But things like that are great places to publish. So see if you can find a way to tweak your thinking to fit the publication. And if you can't, say, oh, well, I'll find another one, because there are millions out there.
Well, that sounds like a great stopping place. So
I was going to say, this is so good. I don't want to leave, but I need to go. So, thank you.
okay, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going. Thank you, Carol, again for I want to reiterate what Andrea said. Your generosity. You gave us so much great information today, and I want to thank anyone else who's watching this live or is watching the replay. And if you'd like to join us for one of our 11 free Zoom gatherings a month, or an in-person in Richmond, Virginia, or Charlottesville, Virginia, comment below and I'll tell you how to do that. You can also go to opwgc.com and find out all about our community. Thanks again for watching.